Welcome to this episode of Rounders Reconnect, and it's my absolute pleasure. And I've been connected up by Brian McInnes with a guy who's actually in a very hot country, far, far away in Bangkok. So we've been lucky to find him, and has got some fascinating memories um, and experience from the late 70s, 80s in Rounders. So welcome, Chris Thatcher.
How do you do? Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. So we'll start from the beginning. Just tell us a bit about how did you get involved in Rounders um and then what drove your passion because you were very, very active in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Um, I was a teacher, and in those days, a fairly young teacher. And one of the things about Coventry, which is where I was that there was a big primary schools rounders association. There were a group of us who ran girls and boys teams separately. We never mixed them up. We might now, but we didn't then. And we used to run through the summer term, and it was for some of us it was a passion. It really was. There were people I can remember from those days who took it so seriously to the extent that they would, for example, work on their bowler backstop first base partnerships to the extent that the kids would turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and be practicing just that, literally that. And
Wow.
and they had such skill, they developed such skill that I would say that any adult team now, whoever they were, would be hard pressed to actually get past that triumvirate.
Yeah.
Um, and there were five or six of us who took it so seriously that when we met up at the tournaments, we played some teams that hadn't been coached particularly. I won't say well, but they hadn't been coached to that extent,
Mm,
and as a result of that, were often wiped out very quickly, which was sad for them.
mm.
But you ended up with the same five or six teams in the final tournament that always won. Very rarely did you get a team that would come through outside that group. And it was a passion. It really was for those people, the teachers that ran those teams. It was a real passion and a real competition. You know,
And
we all had
how old were the kids?
the kids were 10 and 11.
10 and 11. Wow.
Yeah.
And they had that level of skill.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Um, the bowler to the backstop to the first post was absolutely crucial then.
Yeah.
And we had games where teams literally were all out. All the batsmen were out, and I'll say now I use the term batsman when I mean bats women, bats
Yeah,
girls,
yeah.
bats people. Um, were all out without ever hitting the ball and without ever getting past first post. So bit demoralising for the team that actually came up against that. Um, but that was how I started out, and it was the same people really running the football teams in the winter, the cricket teams sometimes, although very few schools played cricket. And the sad thing was that when those kids went to secondary school, rounders disappeared for them, and they would often come back and see me and say, "We don't play rounders anymore. I wish we did." They played cricket, they played all sorts of things, but not rounders, which was sad.
Yeah.
Um, I was a young teacher then, and I went to as a deputy head to a school that had no playing field. So rounders for me just wasn't on that year. Then I became a deputy head,
There
a
we go.
deputy yeah, a deputy head in a school that had a huge playing field. So we used that for many of our tournaments, and that's what got me into adult rounders really, because I ended up working with people like Brian, uh, Terry Woolhouse, I think, was one of the names that I
Yeah,
remember.
yes,
I don't know if
yes.
you've come across that name, but
Yes, I have.
Terry was very keen on rounders. He was from Sheffield,
Uh,
and was that was a big rounders area, and we ended up. I don't know how I got involved with the NRA nationally, but I did. And we used to have meetings regularly in London at the YWCA, and I became, I don't know, an umpire uh, assessor and a coach assessor, as well as an umpire, qualified umpire, and qualified coach. But I think my passion really was coaching, because there are so many things that you can do in a game of rounders that actually make a difference to how the game is played and how it can be won and how it can be lost. Um, and that applies equally to umpires in the sense that umpires used to be very static. You know, they take up their position and that was it. They wouldn't move. Whereas in fact, you can't really umpire a proper game of rounders without moving.
yeah.
So there were a lot of things that we introduced in that time, and the fact that I was working in this school that had a huge playing field meant the dog's decided he wants to play now. She can hear your voice. That's what it is, and
Yeah.
she's chasing a fly. Um, there you are. That'd probably be more interesting for anybody who's watching this than listening to me. And because we had this huge area that was at our disposal, we decided that we could use that for various things nationally. And over a couple of years, we got involved with the England rounders team, and we had national qualifications, assessments to see who the best players would be, things like that. And that's really my involvement in rounders. I wasn't so much interested in the bureaucracy of running the association, but didn't need to be really. People like Brian and myself were people who wanted to get involved with doing, and Terry Woolhouse and people like that as well, but not so much interested in the meetings and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But I'd
yeah.
always the day out in London is always worth having.
So did you, with your coaching and things with Brian and Terry and there was a few other people at the time, did you help develop the material and things, the content of the coaching and the umpiring material?
Yes, it wasn't just me. It was all of us really as a
Yeah.
group. And one of the things that one of my personal things was trying to get, as I said earlier, umpires to be less static. So, for example, if you take the batsman's umpire, the person who stands somewhere around the forward backward line, they needed to move because you can't really watch closely what a bowler's doing and watch closely at where the ball passes the batsman, and then make an assessment on first post or last post without being prepared to move. I've got the bloody hiccups now. That'd make it interesting, won't it?
It will.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the things that caused me most, not concern. Concern's the wrong word, but the fact that, well, if you take the rules of rounders as they were then, I don't know what they are now because I haven't read them for years. But you used to have the situation where the bowler could literally use any part of the bowling square so long as they stayed within it for their delivery. And the batsman could be anywhere in the batting square and in any position. There was nothing that said that the batsman had to be stood up. So one of the things that that the people in Coventry would coach was that the batsman could crouch, which
Oh,
of
wow.
course made, well, it made the difficulty of assessing whether a ball was above the head and so on much more difficult for an umpire if they remain static. And some umpires you could never get that through. And to have consistency in umpiring and consistency in coaching, the players had to understand. Get off, Ginny. The players had to understand the things that they could do, and the umpires had to understand the things that were allowed and weren't allowed. I don't know really. I don't really know how I became uninvolved, but I got a headship, moved away from the school, and headship and the National Association of Head Teachers took up more and more of my time, and I ended up opting out of doing the NRA stuff.
Yeah, because I
And
imagine it was very time consuming.
yes, it could be. It was also very enjoyable. I mean,
Mm.
I think one of my best memories was going down to British Airways Social Club in London, near Heathrow, and working with four of their rounders teams over a weekend, and having a great time. I mean, it was a great time. It was social as well as coaching and umpiring. But I used to love things like that, and that was my biggest memory. And on the back of those contacts, I got my kids in to see Concorde,
Oh, wow.
literally to go on Concorde, not to fly, but to go
Yeah.
on to Concorde. And these were the people who were at the meeting that actually pulled strings for them to do that.
Yeah.
And I still get messages now from some of those kids saying, I remember sitting in the pilot seat of Concorde, things like that. And they're memories that you just you can't improve on, really.
No. So did you go all over doing umpire and coaching training then?
Yes, not all over. I mean, it wasn't an every weekend or anything like that, but it was quite regular.
Mm.
And one of the things that sticks out as well is that I had to give evidence, written evidence, in a court case that actually was brought by a local authority against a school because a child had been injured when somebody had thrown a mat. And I felt sorry for both sides, but you couldn't get away from the rules that said that you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So you ended up in a situation where you didn't want to say anything that would hurt the school or the child who'd been injured,
Mm.
but you couldn't get away from the facts that they shouldn't have been doing that in the way that they were doing it.
Yeah, I remember that at school. When I was at school, you weren't allowed to throw the bat. And the
No,
amount of times we only had one bat or two bats.
yeah, yeah.
So you had to
Well,
make sure you got right round.
yeah, you either scored a rounder and the next batsman could come in, or you didn't score a rounder and then they hadn't got a bat to play with. But I mean, they were playing on the playground, for God's sake, and the
Right.
teacher concerned was giving them the opportunity to play a team game. But that's the way it goes, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So what's your fondest memories then?
Oh, I think we had a great time in when we were selecting the England team at the school in Coventry that I was at. We had various people who had particular favourites. Terry was a good one for that because Terry loved um, promoting, as he should, promoting the people that came from his area. But we had a great time that weekend. We had good fun, and we picked an England team and got on with it, playing against Wales.
Yeah, because there was quite a
Which,
lot of games. There was at least an annual game against Wales, wasn't there?
oh yes, yes, yes. Um, always in England, as I remember. I don't remember ever going to Wales to
Mm.
play a game. There were also areas of the country that were particularly strong. Sheffield, I've mentioned, the British Airways people. There were Pearl Gamble, Ambleside, Ambleside in
Ambleside.
the
Oh,
yeah
really?
in the
In the
Lake
lakes?
District. Yeah, they were quite a strong area for rounders.
Mm. I've heard sort of
Um,
West Yorkshire, Hull area was quite strong, and Sheffield.
yeah, yeah. I don't know why that should be, unless it's a passion that one
Mm.
person has in that area to bring people together. But Terry in Sheffield had a guy called Uriah Rennie.
Oh, I've heard his name.
Have you?
I have, yes. Football referee.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Carry
he
on
went
though.
on. Yeah, Uriah Rennie was a bowler, and Terry arranged for his bowling to be I don't know how you do it, but analysed for speed,
Yep.
and it came out at just about 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
Now imagine you got a little rounders bat in your hand, not a cricket bat, but a little
Yeah,
rounders
yeah.
bat in your hand, and you have this thing flying towards you at 100 miles an hour. My God, if you hit it, you got a rounder for sure. But
Good
if you didn't hit
gracious.
it, that's why the backstop was so crucial.
Yeah, yeah.
But Uriah Rennie, I mean, I don't know, I don't ever know what happened to him, but apart from the fact he went on to become a well-known football referee, and I presume he's not a referee anymore because you never hear about him. But it's things like that. You know, there are people playing the game around us who actually um, gave a lot,
Mm.
and as a result of their giving, the game developed. And I don't want. I'm not going to criticise anybody because I haven't seen rounders played nowadays, in modern terms. I'd love to actually,
Mm.
but it's you don't have mixed teams anymore. I understand.
Oh, is that
Uh,
right? Oh, I thought there were
I
possibly.
I don't think you do.
Right.
But I've only ever seen pictures of ladies or girls playing rounders. Never seen any men involved. But
Mm.
that's a very small part of my experience of. I don't really look out for rounders every day, so I don't
Yeah.
see rounders played.
Mm.
We had ambitions in the excuse me. We had ambitions um, to actually be recognised by Sports Council, which of course they are now,
Mm-hmm.
and to take part in the Olympic Games, which may sound a bit laughable nowadays, but in those days that was our long-term goal to
Mm.
get into the Olympics, and it would be a great game.
And actually,
But
when you look at it internationally, I don't know how it's played internationally because you didn't have a lot of teams to play. But actually, if you go around the world or the people I've talked to with this and my experience, it's a game people just play, isn't it?
yeah,
It's a game people know and play, but it's at what level, isn't it? And what competitive level that you've sort of got to build it to. And when you look at the Olympics now, it has some fabulous sports in it that you would never have expected. So why not rounders?
yeah, why not? I think one of the things that we introduced and we trialed to try and make rounders a more spectator game was a boundary. Now I don't know if they have boundaries now, but
Mm,
we thought that basically you've got a problem if you're running a rounders tournament on a school playing field that you can't fit the pitches in because there is no boundary. So a good hit from one team of one game can go right through into the next game going on.
mm,
And if you have a boundary, at least you don't have the worry about do I score a rounder or not,
mm.
because the other team are just interfering with the ball, basically. Um, I don't know. I'd be interested to know actually if the boundary is still used. If it was only an experiment when we did it,
Mm,
and it might have just dropped by the wayside. It makes marking out a pitch a lot more difficult, of course.
yeah, and a bit less easy just to drop your stuff and do it if you,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Interesting. As I've been sort of doing this project, something that's come really clear is the community around us
yeah,
and the friendships, and also the amount, and you've already mentioned it, the amount of volunteer time that went into, particularly, before the Sports Council money, and even now, to be honest, when you talk to people now, Rounders is a small governing body that doesn't have a lot of money, and people do it for the passion. But I think particularly sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, it was fascinating to, it's been fascinating talking to people and the amount of work they put in to make and the passion they had for it and the community. Did you find that?
yes, yes. In most cases, it revolved around initially one person who would take on, certainly at adult level, who would take on the development of the sport in their area and bring
Mm,
people together and encourage them to form teams and take part in rounders matches against other teams. So the people that we've already mentioned, and a lot of others who I can't even remember, which I feel bad about, but there's nothing I can do about that. I wish there was. It really started with people like that. And if you had people like that in a particular area and there was a love for rounders, then you won't find many people. I guarantee you, if you go to people in their 40s or 50s or 60s, you won't find many people who didn't play rounders or didn't have fun playing rounders. Um, you, it's a bit of that sort of game
mm,
because in primary school certainly, um, when you had a games afternoon, you always played rounders in the summer,
mm,
football or netball in the winter, but rounders in the summer. And most people who played rounders have great memories of it, and you'll find that they wonder why they can't carry on doing that. And that's really about the infrastructure. It's nothing
yeah,
to do with the game at all.
yeah.
Um, and I used to get criticised a lot about my pedantic approach to things like umpiring, and I I would apply the rules as they were written. And there was you can't do that when you're just taking a class of kids out to play a game of rounders,
Mm,
because otherwise you just never stop doing um, a elongated lesson about the rules.
yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that. Keeping contact with a post, for example, when you're at a post, um, is one of those things that you have to teach if you're going into a tournament, or if you were one of those pedantic teachers like I was, and you were trying to coach a team to take part in uh, an event, a tournament, against other teams that would do that. But you can't do that with a group of kids. Take 30 kids out to play a game of rounders. It ruins it for them if
Mm,
every time somebody lets go of a post, you've let go, you've got to run. That's it, and you just can't do that. So there has to be give and take, and I think one of the things about adult rounders that must be very difficult is where you draw that line between what is acceptable. Ow, you bugger! You just bit me.
I didn't.
Oh, as you do, I mean, she's sitting down here trying to get up here now, and she's not big enough to jump up. Um,
Just so everyone, there is a dog there, a Chihuahua,
yeah,
that's listening.
yeah, she's only a puppy. She's 8 months old. Um, and I forgot what I was saying now.
You're saying about the rules and adult rounders
Oh
of
yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah. The rules, yes. I mean, there are so many interpretations of the rules, and you have to decide at the beginning of a tournament how strict you're going to be about those interpretations. So, for example, when you're playing adult rounders seriously with serious competition, and you expect the umpires to enforce all of the rules, then you have to have a team playing that understand what those rules are.
Yeah.
So you get somebody coming into the batting square and crouching down right at the back of the batting square, in the square, legally in the square, but crouching down. So the target for the bowler became much, much smaller. And you'd have bowlers who go right to the back of the bowling square and use the whole of the bowling square to run up, and then shoo, and down it would go. And you've got to have everybody understanding that that's what will happen. You don't want that really with youngsters playing a game of rounders, perhaps just for fun, because it will just spoil it for them.
Yeah, of course it would. And they'll soon
Yeah,
get bored, won't they? They'll soon be picking daisies up in
exactly.
the
Yeah, exactly.
in the outfield.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that I became when we were doing coaching. I'm coaching teams rather than coaching individuals. The field settings. You've got a bowler. Yes, you've got to have a bowler. You've got to have a backstop. You don't have to have a first post, but usually you would. But then the placing of the other 6 people can be anywhere. And of course, you're coaching, if you're coaching at that level, to get the person who's batting to hit the ball in the most unexpected place to score their rounders. So if you've got a right-hander who can hit over first post, then the chances are they're going to get a rounder every time. I mean, hit rather than just it just dribbles over first post.
Yeah, yeah.
And to do things like that, it takes a lot of coaching. So there are some who can do it and some who can't. And I used to have a lot of fun coaching. I used to enjoy umpiring and telling umpires how to properly umpire. But I think the problem is always about consistency. If you play one game, and you're in a tournament, say playing 4 or 5 games, you play one game and the batsman's umpire is mobile and moving, and you play the next game and the batsman's umpire doesn't move at all, then you've got 2 different games.
Absolutely.
You know, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it is. And you know,
you're playing games.
Yeah, and your passion it just comes through as you're talking, and the intricacies of it. Is there anything that has come up that is there anything that we haven't discussed that sort of you thought, oh God, I want to say that, and I want to tell everyone about something that happened in that time? Is there anything you've not mentioned?
No, not really. As I said earlier on, my memory is not as good as I wish it to be. One of the things I asked for when I first got in touch was that if there's any possibility of seeing the minutes of the meetings of the NRA from the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, right.
The reason I wanted to see that was because I want to jog my memory, really. Not because I want to check up on anything.
No, no. And I think they're going through cataloguing it all now, aren't they? All the information. Yeah.
I will find that fascinating when I can see those things.
I'll
be able to look through and say, oh yeah, I've forgotten about him. He was there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got in my mind the name of somebody from the southwest. I think his name was Terry Willoughby. Les Willoughby. And I don't know if I know him through NAHT or through the NRA. I
Mm,
just don't know. You know, it's in there. I know there's somebody
yeah,
called Greg
yeah.
Willoughby, but I don't know which context that he comes from.
And that's the
So
beauty of this project, really, is that one, it sort of stimulates that, oh God, remembering the past and all sorts of memories that, on the whole, are really happy memories. And also, it stores it, so we're cataloging it, and hopefully eventually you'll digitize it so people can access it anywhere and just one like you, oh God, do you remember that person? And do you remember this? And
yeah,
getting in touch
yeah,
with it. Because there's nothing better for you than to suddenly remember someone from the past and even maybe get back in touch,
yeah. Well,
which
that's
is
how I
great.
got in touch with Brian
Yeah,
because basically I saw his name. I saw it on Facebook. I
yeah,
thought, I wonder if that's the same Brian Mackinney, and it was.
yeah.
Um, and we got in touch, and that's how I'm here. Basically,
Fabulous. And that's what this
I,
project's about. It's about
yeah,
connecting people up as well, and as well as telling their memories. Oh, Chris, thank you. And thank you for
my pleasure.
giving me your time from the very warm Bangkok. I'm not envious of the 32 degrees, although, as I was saying to you, it's quite nice here in Yorkshire. Thank you for your time, and thank you all that you've done for Rounders. When you begin to look and sort of dig into the history of Rounders and the people involved, it's people like you that have taken to where it is now. So thank you for your time, passion, and commitment for sort of helping develop the sport to where it is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.